Today's tech news moves fast, but understanding it shouldn't be hard. That's why Snarful Solutions Group brings you Connecting the Dots, where we break down what's happening in tech and why it matters to you. Now, let's dive in with your hosts.
Imagine, writing a check for $200 billion today, just to guarantee that your company has a place to plug in its computers 5 years from now.
Yeah, it sounds completely crazy.
Right, but that is not a hypothetical scenario or some, distant sci-fi concept. That is the sheer physical reality of the artificial intelligence arms race happening right beneath our feet. I'm Alex.
And I'm Morgan.
And welcome to Connecting the Dots, coming to you right here from the Snarful Solutions Group in Sacramento, California.
Yep, glad to be here.
Today is Wednesday, May 6, 2026. And, our goal here every day is to take the most complex tech news and figure out how it actually impacts your everyday life.
Because it really does impact you.
Exactly. We want to connect those dots so you can see the bigger picture without getting, completely lost in the weeds.
Which is incredibly important today, because we are tracking a shift from abstract algorithms floating in the cloud to heavy, expensive physical infrastructure.
Yeah, the stuff you can actually touch.
Yeah.
But first, let's get you caught up on your morning. For those of you traveling today, definitely keep an eye on the skies.
Yeah, it's a bit rough out there.
It really is. There are currently 218 active U.S. weather alerts, with 93 of those sitting over land.
Wow.
So you will definitely want to check weather.gov if you are heading out of state. But if you are staying local with us in Sacramento today, you are looking at a gorgeous one.
Oh, absolutely perfect.
Mostly sunny, a perfect 77 degrees Fahrenheit, with just a light 3 model per hour breeze.
It is the kind of day that makes you want to skip the office entirely, to be honest.
Don't tempt me.
And honestly, the financial markets were looking just as sunny yesterday.
They really were. Tuesday brought us some really solid positive numbers across the board. The Dow jumped 261.13 points.
Which is a good bump.
Yeah, that is a 0.53% increase, closing at 49,298.25. The S&P 500 followed suit, gaining 25.60 points to close out at 7,259.22.
Nice to see that steady green.
For sure. And for those of you tracking crypto, Bitcoin is just continuing its climb. It shot up 1103.52 yesterday, closing at 80,927.05.
The momentum in the markets right now is undeniable. Even if the sports world is a little less forgiving.
Oof, yeah. Rough transition, but accurate. It was a pretty brutal Tuesday if you were a Northern California baseball fan.
Yeah, not our best showing.
The SF Giants dropped their game to the Padres 5-10. Walker Buehler ended up taking the win for San Diego.
Good for him, bad for us.
Right. And the Oakland A's had a really tough night, too, losing 1-9 to the Phillies, with Christopher Sanchez taking that win.
Ouch.
But hey, the Sacramento Kings had the night off, so, at least our local basketball team couldn't break our hearts yesterday.
I will take the small victories where we can get them.
Seriously.
And speaking of starting your morning off with a victory, let's pivot to something that will actually give you the energy to tackle all this heavy news.
Today's episode is brought to you by Strong Coffee, the premium instant coffee that tastes like a traditional brew, but is packed with 15 grams of protein, MCTs, and adaptogens like ashwagandha. Get clean, sustained energy without the jitters. Use promo code SNARFUL for 20% off at strongcoffeecompany.com. All right, let's get into the news, because today we are looking at a trio of stories that paint a very continuous causal picture of where the global economy is heading.
Yeah, it's all connected.
It really is. We are watching the artificial intelligence boom manifest in the real physical world.
So let's unpack this. Our first story looks at a massive financial move by the undisputed heavyweight champion of the AI era, which is Nvidia.
Obviously.
Yeah. They just announced a $500 million equity-linked investment in Corning. And, if you have a smartphone in your pocket or Pyrex of baking dishes in your kitchen, you know Corning.
Right. They're a 175-year-old American glass company.
Exactly. And the financial structure of this Nvidia deal is fascinating because they aren't just buying stock on the open market. They're using something called warrants. And the market reaction alone tells you how significant this is. Before the opening bell even rang, Corning shares soared 20% in pre-market trading.
Wow.
Yeah, hitting $185.59. Nvidia popped over 2% as well. But you are right to focus on the warrants because it reveals Nvidia's actual strategy here.
So I want to make sure we break down the mechanics of this without getting bogged down in Wall Street jargon. Nvidia received 2 different types of warrants, right?
Correct.
The first is a traditional warrant to buy up to 15 million shares of Corning at $180 a share. That makes sense to me. It's essentially an option to buy later at a set price.
Yep, pretty standard.
But the second one is weird. It is a pre-funded warrant to buy 3 million shares at a nominal price of literally a fraction of a penny.
A tiny fraction.
We are talking $0.00001 per share. Why go through the headache of a pre-funded fractional penny warrant instead of just handing them a check or, just buying shares?
Well, it is a highly specialized financial tool used to deploy capital instantly. Yeah. If Nvidia just went to the open market and sought 3 million shares, it wouldn't actually give Corning any new money to build factories, right? It just buys out existing shareholders.
Oh, right, of course.
On the flip side, if Corning simply issued 3 million brand new shares to Nvidia tomorrow, it would instantly dilute the value for every other investor.
Which people hate.
Exactly. And it would trigger a massive wave of regulatory filings and immediate tax burdens.
So the pre-funded warrant is what, like a loophole?
Think of it more like an advance payment on a contract. By pricing the warrant at a fraction of a penny, Nvidia is handing Corning nearly $500 million in upfront cash today.
Wow.
But they're legally deferring the actual issuance of those 3 million shares until later. It allows Corning to take that cash and immediately start pouring concrete and buying machinery tomorrow morning.
Okay, that makes sense. Doing it without blowing up their current stock structure.
Precise.
Okay, that clarifies the how, but it brings up a much bigger why. When I was reading through our source material, I was just trying to figure out why a company that designs the most advanced silicon chips on the planet is suddenly funneling $500 million into an old-school glass manufacturer.
It does seem disconnected at first.
Right. In the early days of this tech boom, people used the analogy that Nvidia was getting rich by selling the pickaxes to the gold miners. But this is entirely different.
How so?
It's more like in the AI gold rush, instead of just selling the pickaxes, Nvidia is now buying up the factories that make the metal for the pickaxes.
Oh, that is a perfect parallel. Yeah. They are looking at the macro environment and realizing they have a massive bottleneck on their hands.
Supply chain issues.
Huge ones. The hyperscalers, companies like Microsoft, Alphabet, Meta, they are projected to spend an astonishing $700 billion this year alone on data centers.
That number is just hard to comprehend.
It really is. And NVIDIA's GPUs are the brains of those data centers. But, a brain is useless if it cannot communicate with the rest of the body.
Right.
NVIDIA realizes that if they don't actively lock down the raw materials to build the nervous system that connects their chips together, the entire $700 billion boom will just grind to a halt.
Moving on to our next story, let's trace where that $500 million cash injection is actually going. Because it isn't just sitting in an investment account yielding interest.
No, it's being put to work immediately.
Exactly. It is sparking a massive physical build-out right now in the United States.
This is where we see the technology fundamentally change the real-world landscape.
Yeah, the partnership between Nvidia and Corning is funding 3 brand-new advanced manufacturing plants going up in North Carolina and Texas.
Which is huge.
We are looking at the creation of over 3,000 high-paying domestic U.S. jobs. Corning is officially targeting a 10x increase in its U.S.-based optical manufacturing capacity.
10 times.
10 times.
Yeah.
And they are expanding their domestic fiber production by more than 50%. Plus, Meta recently threw in $6 billion to help Corning build a massive plant in Hickory, North Carolina.
It is a full-scale industrial mobilization at this point.
But wait, let me push back on that a little bit. Because we have laid millions of miles of copper wiring over the last 50 years to build the global internet.
Right, copper is everywhere.
The entire world already runs on copper infrastructure. Why are we suddenly ripping the guts out of data centers just because AI chatbots are getting smarter?
That's a fair point.
I mean, why can't we just lay thicker copper cables? It feels like an unnecessary, incredibly expensive sci-fi upgrade or something.
It is a great question, but it really just comes down to the unforgiving laws of physics. Traditional data centers use copper wire to transmit data via electrical pulses.
Okay.
And copper is fantastic for normal web traffic, loading a web page, streaming a video, sending an email. But copper has inherent physical limits regarding electrical resistance.
So it cops out.
Exactly. When you try to push the sheer volume of data required for artificial intelligence through copper, it generates immense friction.
Friction meaning heat.
Massive amounts of heat and significant latency, too. In modern AI workloads, you have thousands of NVIDIA GPUs that have to perform complex math in parallel.
Right.
They have to talk to each other almost instantly to train a single model. If you use copper, the electrical signal degrades over distance, and the cables literally run too hot to function at that density.
So pushing AI data through traditional copper wire is essentially like trying to force a fire hose of water through a plastic straw.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
The friction generates massive heat, the pressure builds up, and everything just slows down.
The physics just fail. So the industry is being forced to transition to Corning's optical glass fibers. The technology is called co-packaged optics.
Co-packaged optics, got it.
Instead of using electrical pulses, you are translating the data into lasers. If copper is the fire hose through a straw, optical glass is like flashing a laser pointer across an empty room.
Wow, okay.
There's zero physical resistance, zero heat generated by the transmission, and it arrives instantly.
Which gives a lot of context to that quote from Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang.
Oh, right, the speed of light comment.
Yeah. He specifically said they are building an infrastructure where intelligence moves at the speed of light while advancing the tradition of made in America, because they are literally using light to move the data.
And that Made in America piece is the crucial takeaway for, the working professionals and families listening right now.
It really is.
For decades, the tech industry felt completely invisible. It was just code written in a Silicon Valley office, hosted on a server somewhere out of sight.
Just floating in the cloud.
Right. But AI is demanding physical space. We are talking about thousands of construction workers pouring concrete. We are talking about specialized glass manufacturing, complex cooling systems.
Real jobs.
Exactly. Hiring thousands of skilled tradespeople, engineers, and factory workers in places like Texas and North Carolina. The AI boom is actively revitalizing physical domestic supply chains.
It grounds the whole concept. When you ask an AI a question on your phone, the answer isn't just magic.
Not at all.
It is physically traveling on a beam of light through American-made glass manufactured in North Carolina, powered by a chip designed by Nvidia.
But, all of that physical infrastructure, the land, the concrete, the glass fiber, the power grid connections, it takes years to build.
Which is a problem when you need it yesterday.
Right. And that physical delay brings us to the software side of the equation.
Let's look closer at the companies desperately trying to rent this physical infrastructure before the concrete is even poured.
They're panicking a bit.
Oh, big time. Our third story today focuses on Anthropic. They are the AI startup behind the Claude models, and the financial commitments they're making right now are just mind-bending.
They really are.
Anthropic has reportedly agreed to pay Google a staggering $200 billion over 5 years just for access to cloud servers and chips.
And they're committing to infrastructure that doesn't even exist yet.
Right. They're specifically trying to lock down Google's TPU capacity that isn't coming online until 2027.
Unbelievable.
And that is just one deal. They're also spending $100 billion on Amazon's AWS cloud in a multi-cloud strategy.
We should probably define what they're actually buying there. You mentioned TPUs, which stands for Tensor Processing Unit.
How does that differ from the Nvidia GPUs we were just talking about?
Well, a standard computer processor, like a CPU, is like a fast sports car, making one delivery at a time. It does things sequentially.
Yeah.
A GPU, which Nvidia dominates, is like a massive fleet of delivery trucks. It handles lots of tasks at once. But Google custom-built the TPU specifically for neural network math.
So it's even more specialized.
Yeah, it is like a high-speed freight train track built exclusively to deliver AI data in massive parallel batches. Anthropic knows that if they want their Claude model to survive, they need an exclusive diet of that massive parallel processing.
But the financial risk here seems terrifying. I mean, to put this in perspective, Anthropic's annualized revenue run rate hit $30 billion in 2026.
Which is incredible.
It is an incredibly successful business.
Yeah.
But they are turning around and taking on hundreds of billions in long-term debt just to secure their computing power. Why would a company with that much cash flow mortgage their entire future just to reserve server space?
Because they are looking at the physical supply chain bottlenecks we just discussed. They know that laying glass fiber, building substations, and securing land permits takes 5 to 10 years.
Oh, so it's a race against the clock. It reminds me of, booking every hotel room in the city 5 years in advance because you know a massive festival is coming.
That's a great way to look at it.
They don't want to risk their engineers and their data, sleeping on the street. They're willing to pay an astronomical premium just to lock in the real estate now.
And that real estate hoarding is creating a massive backlog. Right now, there is an estimated $2 trillion revenue backlog across Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Oracle.
$2 trillion.
Yeah. These cloud providers have guaranteed money lined up for years, entirely driven by mega deals from giants like Anthropic.
This is where I want to talk about the everyday listener. If the tech titans are hoarding all the electricity, the networking bandwidth, and the data center space years in advance,
Yeah.
where does that leave everyone else?
In a tough spot.
Like if I'm a mid-sized enterprise trying to upgrade my own internal cloud systems or a startup trying to launch a new app, what happens to me?
You get squeezed out. It is the harsh reality of constrained supply. When the big cloud providers are looking at a $2 trillion backlog from the titans, they have zero incentive to cater to small buyers.
So smaller companies just can't buy what they need.
They will face significantly longer wait times to get the cloud space they request. They are going to run into physical RAM shortages.
Yeah.
And crucially, smaller businesses will have absolutely no pricing leverage. Hardware vendors and cloud operators are prioritizing the contracts that lock in the biggest, longest demand streams.
So if your startup only needs a small amount of compute,
You get pushed to the back of the line, and you will pay a massive premium for whatever scraps of capacity are left over.
that paints a really sobering picture of the tech ecosystem. I mean, we are seeing a complete restructuring of who gets access to the tools of the future.
Driven entirely by who has the deepest pockets today to monopolize that physical supply chain.
Before we wrap up, a quick thanks to Old Glory, an iconic music and sports fan merch store. Perfect for the techie in your life. Use promo code SNARFUL for 15% off at oldglory.com.
So if we step back and look at the whole board today, the narrative is incredibly clear.
Very clear.
The AI boom has left the theoretical realm of software and has become a heavy physical reality.
Yeah, we started with Nvidia deploying a $500 million financial warrant to secure their own supply chain. They are looking past the chips and securing the optical glass required to connect them.
Right, looking at the big picture.
And that capital is flowing directly into the resurgence of U.S. manufacturing, with Corning building massive plants in North Carolina and Texas and creating thousands of jobs just to replace old copper wires with high-speed glass.
And because that physical infrastructure requires, pouring concrete and laying fiber, it moves slowly.
Super slowly.
And that physical delay has triggered a panic on the software side, forcing companies like Anthropic to drop hundreds of billions of dollars to hoard cloud capacity years before it even exists.
It really changes how you view the devices we use every day. Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over today.
Let's hear it.
As the tech titans drop billions to buy up the glass fiber highways of the future before they're even built, how will everyday startups and developers find room to drive their own innovations?
That will be the defining economic battle of the next decade.
We're here to help at Snarful, so reach out on our website if you have any more questions.
That's a wrap on today's top stories. Remember, tech doesn't have to be complicated, and we're here to help connect the dots. If you've got questions or want to learn more, visit us at snarful.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.